Gonna do the countdown, but okay. Here we are. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Far Out Tiny Homes. My name is Jolanne, and today is a very special and exciting day. We're live, and I'm stumbling over my words already. I have Kristina Smallhorn from YouTube here, and we're going to be doing an interview today regarding tiny homes and how they're kind of mixing in with the real estate market. She is a realtor out of Baton Rouge, and she offers a very unique perspective. She's best known for her awesome, no nonsense, no fluff content on YouTube. And while I have you watching, I need to show you her YouTube page. So after watching this, please go ahead and go check out her awesome channel. She has such relevant content. She handles, she's talking a lot about the housing market, the impending crash of 2022, what it looks like and how it's different from what we've already suffered through in 2007 and 2008. So with that, I would love to welcome Kristina. Hello. So we are so excited that you're here. We're talking tiny homes today, obviously. And let's just get down into it. I really feel that we want to kind of walk in your footsteps and just no fluff, no nonsense. We're just here. So do you want to share anything specific about yourself really quick?
Sure. I'm a real estate agent out of Louisiana, and I'm really focused on trying to help people find the most affordable housing options available. A section of real estate that most real estate agents don't focus on because, of course, it doesn't make them the most money. But at the end of the day, I have to sleep at night, and I want to help people. And I got into it very early on with manufactured homes. That was my first real estate sale, was a manufactured home. So I like to help people that normally people don't want to take the time to help because it doesn't necessarily bring them the most money at the end of the day for their paycheck. And I understand that, but I have my fuel, my currency, I guess, is the fact that I help somebody that no one else would help.
Yes. And I love that. I mean, that's so true to tiny homes because we do the same thing. We are in it to bring affordable housing to the marketplace and really look at alternative housing and how that could look and how that could help somebody. Because as you know, I mean, you're in a major area, major metropolis. So are we. Las Vegas median home price is right near $395,000. And we went and toured these homes that are at that price tag, and they're horrible. They need $100,000 worth of work. They're just all funky or they're tract houses, and they're kind of just like little stucco boxes. So we are definitely resonating with one another on that point with affordability and why that's so important. So on your channel, you discuss a lot of this, like impending housing market crash and how it's going to look different than 2007 and 2008. And I would love if you would just briefly kind of cover what your thoughts are on that, what it's going to look like, and just kind of wrap it up in a little cute bow, because I want everybody to go to your channel to look at the in-depth markers of what to really look out for.
Well, in 2008, 9, and it took almost 10 years for us to get out of that particular housing crisis. There was a many people that had these kind of kooky loans where they were interest only or balloon payment loans, and anybody could get a home loan. Anybody could. So it caused the housing market to increase exponentially. You could literally walk into any lending office and get a loan just by saying, I make $300,000 a year, even though you don't. You just could state that you do. They asked for very little documentation, and they would make these loans. Now, what people don't understand is that type of loan package had been out since Reagan, but it became popular until later on, as more mortgage brokers were like, hey, we can really, get some numbers going if we put out more of these loans. Yeah. So it was, even though the program had been around for quite some time, it was just really popular at that specific time, and of course caused the housing crisis. At that time, then we had an over increase of supply of homes because everybody was, once the bubble popped, we had an oversupply of homes because everybody was getting foreclosed on. This is different because people, first of all, are in a forced recession. They were forced to not have a job, and they still can't get their job. There's been no stimulus other than the fact that they have frozen their mortgage payments, and they keep freezing, and they keep tacking them to the end of the loan. Not all mortgagers have what is called a government-backed loan. Some of them have conventional loans. So those people that have conventional loans can take that any kind of structure they want to on repayment. So they increase their payments, saying you've missed 6 months, so now we're going to increase your payments X amount. And if you don't have that money and you budgeted only for, let's just say, $1,200 in mortgage payments, now the forbearance is over with, and now it's $1,600 because you've missed 6 months. That's a lot. Not only that, they've also missed months worth of escrows, meaning your taxes, meaning your property taxes, property taxes, and your insurance. So where is that money coming from? Somebody's going to have to pay back the piper, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. So it's kind of like, it's like a dam of what's to come, and they keep holding it up, and all these houses are backing up against that dam. At some point, there's already going to start being some cracks, and you're just going to start seeing it. And how you're going to start seeing it is that you're going to see one house that the people just moved out, and you're going to be like, how come that house is vacant, but there's no for sale sign? And then you're going to see a few others, and then a few others. And then slowly but surely, you're going to see for sale signs, and people aren't necessarily buying like they used to. And that's what happened in Florida. And then it's going to trickle down. When that magic date is going to happen, I have no idea. You know, I can predict it to death. I say at the end of the third quarter, if they don't continue doing these kick the can, mortgage forbearances and everything else, the end of the quarter of 2021, we're going to start seeing more stuff. It doesn't mean that the market's going to be necessarily flooded with foreclosures. We're just going to see some things that look a little off. And then heading into 2022, again, if there's no government interference on how they're going to rectify this with people, then we're in a world of hurt.
Right. Okay. And so I know here in Las Vegas, we're just about $395,000 for a median, home price starter home. And we have, in your previous videos, you had discussed overvalued homes. So how does that, just to help clarify, get us all on the same track, like how does an overvalued home then work into, creating even more turbulence within this impending crash, if at all?
Well, you have to just look at what happened in 2007. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. My house, we bought for $135,000 in Florida. In the big bubble, my house went all the way up to, at the height, $285,000 in 4 years.
Oh, wow.
That is stupid. It's way overvalued. So much so that who would buy this house for $285,000? In my neighborhood, people were selling the little 1,500 square foot 1990 house for that amount of money. We ended, once that started to look like it was going down just a scotch, I said, Eddie, let's go ahead and get another job in another state where it has more work, in a balance in their housing prices. Okay. That's why we ended up in Louisiana. So we went ahead and we sold that house for $250,000. $250,000. So just in that 6-month window, it lost $30,000. Wow. That man who bought our house for that amount of money sold it 10 years later for $189,000.
My gosh.
He lost big time.
Oh, so that's so heartbreaking. And that's exactly what we're seeing here in Las Vegas, where some of the houses in my neighborhood in 2017, they were selling for around $300,000. Right now, they're selling at $1,600,000. It's crazy. It's so the inflation here, I think it's a scary thing, or the overvaluation of homes. And I know the land is a hot commodity. We do have restricted growth boundaries here in Las Vegas, so I know that really plays in on it. But to see in the house that we're in specifically, I mean, it was valued in 2017 at right at $300,000, and just went through a refinance, and we're right at $650,000, which is crazy. Isn't that nuts?
That is nuts, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like that, and darn well in your own mind, you're like, who's going to buy this house at $600,000? And another reason why, I mean, you guys have a building restriction there in Las Vegas. So that is another reason why your market is completely different than some of the other areas. Now, throughout the United States, there's been a building freeze because there was a supply chain problem at the start of the whole COVID thing. Then there was a lumber problem because there were so many natural disasters that you couldn't get as much lumber that needed to go out to build new homes because they had to restore old homes that were affected by hurricanes and fires. And roofing supplies was another one that was having a big problem. So now those building materials are costing home builders a lot more money. So they're having to charge more. They're building the exact same house, but it's costing them more to build that exact same house it did a year ago. So that increases their prices. The home builders had a problem getting as many homes as they normally do during a housing boom. Like they normally would have, let's just say 30, 40 houses built. And now they were only able to get like 25 built because of all the problems throughout the year. So that caused another increase in prices. Those problems are going to they're going to leak into 2021, but then the supply chain is going to be opened up. Yes, the building prices are going to be a little bit higher, but they're going to make the market a little bit easier for home buyers to buy a house because existing homes are going to be a little bit harder to sell, a little bit, not what people are hoping for, but a little bit because of the fact that, some people are like, well, why would I buy an existing house when the home builder's building a new one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It is that.
Now, I don't know in your area, but in California, they have this weird kooky rule that I thought was insane, that if you had a house under contract, let's just say it was under contract for $350,000, by the time that it was finished building, they could charge you more money at the closing table because they said that now the cost of the house is $400,000. So that's how much the house is. Can they do that in Las Vegas?
That's one thing I'm not sure of. Now, is that like a rule that's been enforced for a long time, or is that a COVID thing? Because I could see that being a COVID thing. We have seen huge price jumps, like you're saying, within building costs. And I know that some other tiny home builders, they do within their contract say that prices can change at any moment. And that's just because, I mean, in the past 2 months, we've received 3 different notifications from suppliers with prices jumping 15 to 30%. And when we're in the middle of a build and we have like a 30% jump, like let's say for windows, we're like, okay, well, that just upped the budget by like $700. It's either coming out of our labor or it's coming out, or you guys are going to have to pay that additional as our clients. And so we've actually been fighting about like, how are we going to do this? Because that's huge. I don't know if that's here in Las Vegas. I get it if it's a COVID thing in California, but I don't know.
I think it was because there was just so much demand, then the builders could ask for it. I don't know what the reasoning is. Julie Patterson was on one of my live streams. She's a real estate agent out there, and she was telling me that. I'm like, oh, we can't do that here. People wouldn't buy the house.
I mean, that's crazy. That's very greedy. But I mean,
greed rules the world right now.
Yeah,
and it's so, and the thing is with people that generally are looking for affordable housing options, the greed monster attacks these people the hardest. And that's the part that annoys me to death, because people, I don't know if you know, because I know you're talking about tiny homes, but with manufactured homes, they have something called a chattel loan. It's, a lot of times when people can't afford the land and the house, they'll put their home into a park. So they have a manufactured home park. The park manager can erase those rates at any time. Then they have this chattel loan that's over 20 years, not 30, and it's at a much higher, much higher interest rate. And so even if your credit is spot on, you have an 800 credit score, you've been paid your bills for years perfectly, you've never missed a payment in your life, and you just because you're wanting to put it on a rented piece of land, they can charge you like 10%.
That's so crazy.
And I'm like, that's terrible. That is terrible. But then because a lot of times they don't know that you could probably find another option of purchasing this without using a chattel loan, or at least going to another finance option. You can use other finance options. They just feel like they're wrapped in because they're at this place. They want to get it done that day. They're like, okay, I want this house. They pick it off a lot, and then they just go with the financing office that's there in the lot itself. Don't do that. I mean, that's the one thing that I recommend is do not do that. Go talk to a bunch of different lenders, whether they're traditional lenders or, your local bank. See if they can get you a better rate, because a lot of times they can. And it behooves the person that owns that lot for you to use their lender, because, that's what their whole spiel is. Go find another place to give your money to somebody else. Get the loan somewhere else. Do not get it from the people on the lot. To get the house from them, but move somewhere else to get your money there.
Yeah. I appreciate that, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so especially if you're sold this house and you're like, I want to keep it all in the same place, and it's so much easier just to stay here. But then, like you said, you're getting charged left and right, nickel and dime. And I agree.
You need somebody to break down exactly what their charges are. So if you're going to shop this, right? So you say they're like, oh, why don't you meet with our financial guy? So you're like, okay, and have them write down all the numbers that they charge you for this. Take that piece of paper and walk into your local bank and say, hey, this is what they're charging for me for this. Is this right? And your local bank is going to be like, this is a stupid charge, and no, this isn't right. And I'm not saying all lenders do this. I'm not saying all places do this, but there's a good portion of people that take advantage of people that are less fortunate. So definitely just check with somebody outside that realm, so that way you know exactly what you're getting yourself into.
Exactly. And that also ties in just with lending with tiny homes as well. Because a lot of the way we are finding, funding for these homes is through unsecured personal loans. And
yes, you're right.
And those have the worst interest rates, the worst payback terms. And it's the same situation. If you can get some sort of numbers from your builder, and then instead of going for, an unsecured personal loan from like Lightstream, sorry about it, but maybe going to your bank and seeing what products they can offer. Yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's just like, again, you don't know what you don't know, and just try to research and do as much of that work before you're getting yourself into a situation that is going to fail.
With this housing crisis, I wish, and you and I talked about this off camera, I wish that the government would make government-backed loans for less than $65,000, but cap it off at $35,000. No less than $35,000, but there would be a window, and maybe you do charge like 2 percentage points higher instead of 10 percentage points higher. But at least it would be a secure government-backed loan. Now, I understand that they can't do it for something that would be mobile and running down the road. But if this was a permanently attached foundation tiny home in a tiny home community on a lot, and it's taxed like property tax, why couldn't the government back that loan?
Right.
And if they're concerned about the risk, again, if you just go ahead and, there's PMI insurances and all sorts of other ways that you can secure this. They've done this before. This is not new and the crazy, wild, progressive idea. They did it after World War II for builders. They made it less expensive for them to get building materials to build as many homes as possible, because they wanted Americans to live in housing. So they made these cookie cutter small houses. They were only 2 bedrooms. Some of them were 3 bedroom. But 3 bedroom was like the big house, but they were all small little houses in a row that looked almost identical to each other, and they were popping them off like candy. And you could do the same thing with a tiny home and have them have these type of mortgages that maybe just a special section of the federal government, like they have for HUD, what they do with manufactured homes. You could do the same thing for tiny homes. They can be regulated. It can be regulated because tiny homes, a lot of them are built to the same specifications as a standard built home, or they're built to modular specifications, which sometimes exceed standard building codes. So why couldn't they do that? There's just it makes no sense in my head. And if they're really wanting to help the little guy own a piece of America, this is what they should do.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that kind of leads right into my next question with, Appendix Q is put within the IRC means to actually receive that occupancy permit for a permanent tiny home. And now there is some stuff going on in like California, Santa Cruz, San Diego, that area that's doing a movable tiny home ordinance, which is really cool. Don't know everything about that right now, but
it sounds messy. With movable property, it sounds very messy.
It does, and I'm excited to see what they come up with. But we'll see, because I don't know.
I think once you attach it to a permanent foundation and it's affixed to the property, they're going to be much better off, because I think that they're going to open up a big can of worms if it's movable property.
Yep, exactly. And so we'll kind of see. Hopefully, I'm actually going to speak to the president of FIA, which is the Tiny Home Industry Association, this week regarding this ordinance to say, okay, like, what are you doing? Is this actually viable for, a nationwide kind of movement, making the movement move, basically. But so the question is, I guess, now that some municipalities have accepted this Appendix Q and they can go ahead and receive that occupancy permit for the permanent foundation tiny homes, how is this going to change the real estate market? And I know this is like a very broad question because every market is so different, but I guess in your perspective, with these smaller homes now actually maybe having a chance within, actually being able to build 400 square feet and less, how do you see it changing the market?
Well, I think at the beginning it's going to be a great test. So it will be a test to other people to say this is going to work or it's not going to work. So as soon as they do this and people can physically see a working tiny home community with just regular people, because in their mind they're like, there's just a bunch of derelicts, the hippies that are smoking pot out there. No, that's not how it works. Once that is the catalyst, it's going to open it up to a lot of different places throughout the United States, because millennials are the ones that are completely dropping off the real estate market. We have bombarded them with student loan debt. We have bombarded them with rising home prices. So and now they can't even find a job. So the pandemic found them without a job. They have a huge debt to income ratio, and they can't even afford a house. So if they open that up to them, you're going to open up the ability for those people to purchase a home. But it isn't just millennials. It's people that they don't think about, which is retired. A lot of people are looking to retire and they don't want a big house. They want a small house that they can come home to, because they're going to get in their RV and travel across the United States. Retirement people are the biggest group of people that are looking for a small house to live in, so they can have the ability to travel around the world, experience life, be retired without being chained to a mortgage. So this is another, I think it will open their eyes to a lot of people that are saying, no way, I'm not doing that. Well, yeah, I guess maybe that could work, because and a working example is the best example.
Right, exactly. And I know that here, specifically in Las Vegas, we're trying to just do the one-off. So I would love a tiny home community, right? Like that's the big dream. That's our huge overarching dream for specifically Las Vegas. We have our housing crisis is crazy here. But right now we are literally working on a 1-by-1 project. So a client has a parcel of land. We're working with zoning. We're working with, planning, permitting office to move forward on a tiny house. And so in that respect, if you take a step back away from like the community stand and you're just seeing tiny homes pop up in communities, obviously not the master plan communities, but like just in regular, cul-de-sacs or whatever, you can buy a parcel of land and place a tiny house. How do you think that that's going to affect the housing market? If at all, and maybe it won't.
The problem with any kind of, like, if you have an established subdivision and you've all these houses that are in uniform, and then you have a small house that sits out, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Neighbors are going to hate that, and it's going to drive down the property value. In order to have this to work in a correct way, you would have to have an established neighborhood that would allow for every home, no more. It couldn't be any bigger than 600 square feet. And all the rest of them would be less than that. That's the only way to make this work, where those properties could hold their value, and the people that live around there would be accepting of it. You would have to make a planned, unified development, because you can't just throw a tiny house right next to a house that's 5,000 square feet. It's going to look terrible. It would look terrible even in my little neck of Louisiana. There is some tiny houses here, but they're one right after another.
Okay.
So they're like little Smurf houses. Like you have to make it like a little Smurf village. So that's what, if they were to do it, that's what I would call it, Smurf
Okay.
village.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess that does make a lot of sense because when we were talking to the city, that was one of the questions that came up was, well, okay, so we have Vegas is weird. It's like we have like houses everywhere, and they're not all necessarily like in a neighborhood, if that makes kind of sense. So you'll have like
Right. Same here.
Like a 1,300 square foot home next to like a 5,000 square foot home. One street's good, 2 blocks down, it's all crappy and crime ridden, right? But in between all those areas are these little tiny parcels of land. And so one of the questions was, well, okay, so let's say we do throw the tiny home on there and then it's only up to 400 square feet, right? Well, what's that going to do to the neighborhood? And then people are going to, like you said, write it back. So my question is, I guess more now a statement, because you already answered it, is that they will bring down the value for other homes just because it's a smaller housing footprint. Is that correct?
If you have a neighborhood that already has had established price per square foot, if that area has been established and it has price per square foot, then you put these little tiny houses right next to them. Most likely, it's not the uniformity is going to be off. You're going to have to make it so the uniformity is there. So if they have a big area that doesn't have any homes in it, well, then you can parcel that off, like you said. Then that's that section. That's the tiny home section. This is the single family housing section where they're over 500 square feet. You understand what I'm saying? Even though the appraisal would be different, you don't want to bring people's property down. There has to be a definite line where people can say, once you cross over that street, then it's, the regular housing.
Okay, that makes sense. And so, and I know somebody had asked a question, well, what if, like, do you think anybody would even be interested in moving forward with a project like this if you're spending $100,000 on the parcel for like, a quarter acre or something, and then, or even a half acre, and then you're putting this tiny home that's like, a $70,000 tiny home. And so obviously, I mean, total package when it's all said and done, it's still under that 200,000. But because the land is worth so much more than the house, what does that look like in the real estate market?
There's two ways to look at it. So either you're buying a piece of land and you're valuing the house at no value whatsoever. That's like a lot of times that's what happens in a lot with manufactured homes. So you're just basically living in that house, knowing that it's not going to be worth anything when you sell it. It's just going to be worth the land underneath it. Or it can be worth something as long as you create a value within that community. If the place ends up turning to crap, and people aren't maintaining the properties, and there's a bunch of derelicts that are running the streets, the value is going to go down. But if you create a community of people maintaining the properties, that like it continues to stay cute for a long period of time, the interest in buying those houses is going to increase, and then the property value will increase with the home's value as well. It all has, because if you even look in like places like Florida and California and Arizona and even New Jersey, they have lots of manufactured home parks, lots of them that are full-on communities that gain a lot of value over the years. I mean, they have homes that are built, even in California, there's homes that were built in 1976, manufactured, actually, because they were before 1976, they're considered trailers. And they're still selling those on rented land for $1 million+ because of the location, first of all, but because those properties were maintained. I guarantee it would not be worth diddly poop other than the land if they did not maintain those properties.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I have seen that. We were looking at real estate out in Oceanside to like potentially park a tiny home. And we're like, oh my gosh, well, there's, manufactured homes there. Like you're saying, they're on rented land and they're upwards of 300,000, like ocean adjacent, not even on the beach. It's crazy. And you don't even own the land.
You just have to look at it like you'd have to plan it out really, like, especially if it was like an inner city. Like I wouldn't allow trash cans on the front of the house. I would have them put the trash cans on the back side of the house. No parking. So you'd have to give enough land for people to at least park one car, and you would have to give them a little strip of land in the front and the back. If you can do all of that, then you've won the lottery as far as making a successful tiny home community. And there's lots of small home communities, small, not, I mean, I'm saying like a 1,200 square foot house, but you can use that footprint or blueprint of that and make it even smaller. It's very possible. There's no reason why you can't. It's just the people are like, I've seen them on TV and they're just a bunch of hippies that raise geckos. No, that's not how it works. That's just what you saw, you know?
Yeah, they think I mean, when we lived in our tiny house, we were like the neighborhood weirdos. I mean, they're like, why would you want to do that? It's like, well, because we can't afford to do anything else. We built this house because it's what we could afford to do. Is it the house that we needed? No, we needed a bigger space, but we made it work. But yeah, and that's the other point, you know, of our channel is like advocating and normalizing living in these small spaces. Like not everybody can afford a 1,200 square foot house, but let me tell you, not everybody wants to afford it. And a lot
I would have done that. If it was available as a young couple, my husband and I, we lived in a very small apartment, and we were totally tickle pink with that apartment. We would completely fine, and it would have like stopped us from collecting a bunch of nonsense.
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
Because we end up collecting a lot of dumb stuff. But you know, when you're first married, you don't even have anything. We didn't even have Christmas decorations. And my husband had a collection of old Stone Cold Steve Austin figures. So we got a tree, and that's what we hung on our tree. It was a Stone Cold Steve Austin tree.
That's funny. But see, I mean, you do what you have to do, right? And and I totally understand that. And I think a lot of this movement too, to keep it affordable, because then when you start getting up to those $200,000 price tags for a tiny home, people are like, oh, you know, I could spend $150,000 more and get a regular sized house, you know? So it's like that. I don't think we've found a balance yet. And so I do think a lot of people are pushing to have these permitted as like ADUs. And so you're using that existing housing fabric, like San Luis Obispo in California. They have moved through, this was last year, with being able to permit a tiny home on wheels as like a structure in the backyard. And so you're just renting this little tiny piece of land from, you know, whomever, whether it's, you know, I mean, I don't really know exactly the ins and outs of it, but it was like $10,000 to get the permit for a tiny home, which I'm like, but then, I mean, again, it's just so counterintuitive, and we're not finding a good balance. So I guess you see that going.
Okay, so the thing is that what makes people happy in the political world is money. So if you think about it like this, you could have somebody that's living in an apartment building and not paying property taxes. Or you could have something that has a little slice of the pie, just such a small little slice of the pie. And now they're paying property taxes. Now you have more money for the whole entire community on vacant lots that weren't doing crap anyway. You know, they've been sitting there for years, nearly life property. Commercial people didn't even want it. You know, like, think about it that way. Because even in Detroit, there was a lady who had gotten an inheritance. And a lot of it was, you know, because Detroit kind of turned to poop. She was like, forget it. So she took all this Blythe property. She plowed it all out and made a tiny home movement community in that area, even helping some of the homeless in another area of this community that she created.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic. She was genius. And I was like, what a great way to spend your inheritance. She's
no kidding. No kidding. Yeah. That's helping out so many people. And I mean, now here in Las Vegas, we definitely have a huge homeless problem. It's horrible. People actually live in the tunnels underneath our city, the storm drainage. And
I watched this whole thing about Skid Row and how it was designed and how it was created in the first place. I was like, wow, that's
isn't that nasty?
I think it's just one of those things that, like, I don't know, over time it happens, or it was just something like, if we keep them scooted over in this place and section it off, we'll just keep it away from everybody else.
Yep, we'll just hide the dirty shit.
Instead of addressing it and taking care of it, they just try to hide it and brush it underneath the carpet. And as we all know, whenever something like that happens, all it does is turn into a big, giant, festering pimple. And at any moment, it's going to pop. And you guys are at the point where it's about to pop.
Yeah, exactly. It's so sad. And it's like, we could be using tiny homes or, something like that to help out our homeless population,
I
but
talked to a senator in California that was genuinely interested in doing just that.
Yep. But then it's like we could do a land lease with the city. We could get cheap land, but then it's like,
exactly
how
right.
are we going to find the funding, for these homes? How are we going to vet? How are we going to, secure it so it doesn't turn into a situation where it's, illegal.
You can turn that into a whole planned unified development, and the fact that you could offer job training in one section. I mean, all they're doing right now is spending a bunch of money to keep these people in one specific place, and now create a place for everybody to go to where they feel like human beings instead of sleeping on grates. Give them a purpose. And even in Austin, where they have a tiny home community for the homeless, they work on the community itself. Their paycheck is part of taking care of the community. And so they have a job. That's their job, is helping maintain the community. So they want to make the community work.
Yeah.
So, but then they also have people that work there that are part of mental health, and they help them, with counseling and all sorts of different things. They have, and you could totally do that instead of having all these different entities all throughout the states, trying to do their one little thing for the day and then getting out. Have one area, have everybody have a community, give everybody a safe space to live. And you're thinking, well, how are we going to afford that? I know that's the first thing that comes in their mouth. But if you saw how much money that was actually done to do what we're doing now, which is freaking inhumane. It's the same money. And then on the long run, you've saved people more than you have destroyed them. And the problem isn't getting worse, it's getting better.
You think it would be that easy. And I'm not really sure, man, I'm not even really sure where to go with it. We would love to be a part of helping it out. And I think because tiny homes are, quote unquote, an inexpensive way to house folks, that's a lot of where that stigma comes from, is how we, did try to move forward with the city of Boulder City here on that planned development. And we had architects on board. We had it all. We had visuals. We had all this stuff. And they still didn't want to move forward with this to just house their own workforce housing. I'm just talking about the people that work at Starbucks and they want to own a house and they can't afford $500,000. Like you said, just a little sliver. And they still were like, no, we're not going to do it, because they couldn't separate that. They couldn't separate housing the homeless in the same, not even in the same kind of situation, but housing
that would be totally different. It's a completely different thing.
Exactly. But I think
I'm like basically my mind for the homeless, it's a community center to help these people get back on their feet. Now you have another group of people that are totally on their feet. They just want to own a piece of American pie. That's it.
That's it.
Totally different things.
Totally. But separating that. That's why when we say we're talking about affordability and tiny homes, that's why they're like, oh, affordability, affordable housing, Section 8. I don't want to deal with the project. I don't want to deal with crime. I don't want to see, I don't want to see anything illegal happening. That's where that lack of education comes in. Hence these important discussions that like you and I are having. People need to understand that, come on, you guys, like we got to do something different here.
In major cities, the Section 8 housing that did not work was because they made basically like bricked jail cells for people. I don't know if you've ever been in Section 8 housing in Atlanta, which I have had. It's literally like walking into, they paint the walls this really minty, weird green, like they do in prisons. That they look like dormitories. The walls are all made with concrete cinder block and everything else. Everything is bare minimum. And then they're small. I mean, it literally is like the smallest hotel room you could possibly think of. And then you have a mother of 3 living in that. And that is not how you treat a human being. I'm sorry. If you gave these people their own individual little house that they could own, they wouldn't even do Section 8 because they could have a piece of America that they could afford. You know, the way that it works now, there isn't anything for them to afford. You've not made it possible for the average American to afford the average house. The average house in America is over 200, almost $300,000. The average American income is about 84,000 for a family of four.
Yeah. And I think that's high even. That, I mean, which is crazy. It's a situation, and like you said, if we could just divert funds and, you know, actually go the right route, we might have a solution.
We've been throwing money at a lot of bad projects, but because that's the way it's been done for years, that's the right way. And we got to stop throwing money at bad things. We have to turn around and say, okay, we're going to have to like allocate these funds in a different way. But it's mostly because people have two ways of thinking. Either they want to help, or they want to be like, people need to pull up their bootstraps and do it themselves.
Yeah.
But you're not giving them the tools to pull up their bootstraps to do it for themselves. There is such, you know, there's two things that you got to put together. If they have never been given the opportunity, how are they going to do that? Exactly. And then we have these kids that are like they've worked their whole lives. You know, they went through high school, they went through college, they now looking for a job, and they're in the middle of a pandemic. They have a little bit of money. They'd like to buy a house. They don't want to spend it on rent. Allow them to buy a house. Give them the opportunity to do that. This is a sure way. We've learned in the past, this is a way that people build wealth. So give them a little tiny start, just a little start in life, a little bit. It's not a handout. Just give them a loan that they can afford, which is incredibly possible. And I'm guaranteed you'll win in the long run. It worked in World War II, and it will work again.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to wrap up, I mean, from your perspective, what can folks do to like help make that movement move? And we have people right now that are watching, or they're going to watch the recording later, and they're like, yeah, that's me. I am a college graduate. I can't afford a regular house. I have good credit, but I have my debt to income ratio is like, totally unbalanced. Like, what would you suggest? Like, who do they call? What do they do? How do they make the movement move so that we can actually see some change?
You got to get in with people that make the laws. That's all there is to it. You have to get with your local officials and talk to them about these things. They're going to blow you off at first. They're going to tell you you're silly. You have to be very prepared with what your idea and why you want to do this idea, and give them all the reasons. So you already know that they're going to say, this is the reason why you can't. So you be prepared for those answers, so they sound stupid. Like you answer their question when they say, well, there's just nothing but derelicts. You're going to show them all the charts that say, actually, the highest group of people that are living in tiny homes are people that are looking to retire, that have a fixed income. And you're going to show them all the information and why their answer is wrong, and that you have hardcore data. They're basing everything off of anecdotal evidence, and you have the hard facts. You come prepared with those local areas. And I would contact your local governor's office. I would also contact your local senators and House representatives. And then I would go all the way up to the federal government. So I would just keep being that voice of advocacy for people like yourself that just you have the money, you have the good credit. You just want a taste of the American dream, which is to own a home.
Yep, exactly. And I think that that's really great advice. And starting from a local level, that's where it's at. That's literally what we're doing here in Las Vegas. So if you need, help with advocacy in your own state, either reach out to myself or Kristina. But that about wraps it up. I do want to let you guys know, please go and check out her channel. Like, if you think this was informative, watch her get down on some niche topics. Like, it's amazing. She's so well versed in everything that she does. So super stoked that you all tuned in. Big thank you to Kristina. As always, you're amazing.
Thank you, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there, anything else you want to add to, what we've been talking about today?
Well, I would like to know if anybody does have a tiny home project in their local area that is successful, please let me know, because I would like to feature that on my channel so I could show other people and other developers, and it would be a great resource for somebody that's trying to do it in their own community. So if you have a project that has been working and has been successful in your area, and maybe there's 100 different YouTube videos on it, Doesn't matter. Let's just get it in front of as many people as possible, because that way it will help people in other states so they can show it to their local officials.
Yep. That's awesome. That is great advice. And it's all about making the movement move, right? That's what we say here at FarOutTinyHomes. So yeah. We're kind of groovy. We're not so. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with all of us. And thank you all so much for tuning in. We love you guys. You guys are the best. And we hope that you have a wonderful day.
Super mega awesome day.
All right. Bye, guys.